Hey, it's Adrenium. So, I've just finished high school and I've recently started attending university. So, that made me think about what to do about my video output and my motivation in Minecraft in general. In the past 8 months that have elapsed since my last video on the Abandoned World timelapse series, I've been starting to do other projects that didn't really go anywhere. I'm a person who will mostly only do something if I feel like doing it. This is true for both making YouTube videos but also for real life stuff. This has a flaw in many cases, but it has the one benefit of me being happy with what I do when I do them. The way I can improve myself in this regard is to see what makes me want to do things. I've, for example, played guitar for 4 years now, and it's only something that I do for myself, and nobody is expecting me to get better or improve at it. I take it at my own pace, and that works for me. I'm always motivated to play the guitar, and I'm always motivated to improve. But I also know that if I took lessons in it, I would lose that motivation. There could be, for example, an expectation for me to improve a certain way and learn things that I don't specifically find enjoyable. But by learning the different chords one by one and learning to play the songs that I enjoy, I get better by time naturally. And that kind of thing happened with my motivation after I ended the Abandoned timelapse series. I really enjoyed the series and the building process. The thing that made me stop was motivation, but it was the lack of direction in the project that made me unmotivated, not that I didn't enjoy the building process itself. After I started another project, that is what you see in the background footage here, I wanted to have a different direction, where I more closely followed the building style of older European cities. And this time I would utilize world edit, as it is much more efficient than block by block, as I did in my Abandoned timelapse series. And the only times I used for copying buildings was when a corner building had a twin at the opposite corner. So world edit was an upgrade in terms of time efficiency, but it was a different build flow than the abandoned city. Of course I had used world edit before, but that was mostly for landscaping and copy and pasting the same structure. For my abandoned city it was especially the windows which I found unrealistic, although they looked pretty good in that context. But when I started doing other projects, so I started building after real life buildings, mostly from Copenhagen, which is my home city, which has the neoclassical architecture. I enjoyed the more realistic look with more details and variety. But it was also harder and more alt-tapping as I was looking at a ton of reference images and Google Maps. I got tired of always having to refer to something out of the game, and I feel like it limited my creativity. But as I got into the building style, I started to make buildings of my own without much reference. But as I found out, this quickly got boring with the same sandstone color palette and identical windows. So I moved on to my next project. My next project was going to be bigger than any of my previous projects combined. I had a whole world painter map inspired roughly by Northern Europe and Asia, and I would start with a city in the west part of the map. Then I would go around and do different projects in different areas of the map, so I had plenty of opportunity to do different building styles in this vast world. I would then connect them with railroads, roads, rivers, and it was a perfect playground for all kinds of projects, build styles and ideas. The reason I chose this format of creative building was because I did something similar when I was still in elementary school. But instead of a modern world, it was set in a medieval time, with a main city and roads leading to other areas, including an autumn forest, a fortress and a snowy town, all of which I actually built rather than only plan. I have very fond memories of this vast world, but in the end I also went on to do other things at that time. This time though, I made 3 buildings before I lost motivation, and at this point I didn't really know what to do. The buildings I made looked spectacular, and were almost perfect replicas of the real world counterparts. So I started looking for an answer to the question, why am I always getting so unmotivated? The revelation came when I took the wooden axe of world edit and measured the height of the buildings I had built. It came to round about 50 blocks. I then went on to my last project and measured the height to about 45 blocks. And finally I went to my abandoned city and found the height of an average building to be 25 blocks. As you can see, this gave me a perfect linear graph that showed my motivation as a function of the average height of my buildings. This is of course a bit of a joke, but it is true in a way. I found that the grander I built, the less motivated I was to continue the project. I think it's fun if a project can be of a larger scale, but that mostly goes for individual builds, for me at least. By building bigger, you can give the individual building more detail and character, but it also limits creativity, as I was recreating real-life buildings to such a detail that there wasn't any room for my own creative inputs, and the building process became stale. Of course, this is only in my opinion and for me and my creativity. I'm sure that a lot of different methods works for everybody else. I don't know. I'm only talking about my own challenges with my creativity. But having realized this, I went on to a very small project compared to the rest. A 100 by 100 plot of land that I gave a specific theme, and then built that theme to the fullest in that plot of land. It was very fun to do this small challenge, as I could deep dive into the planning and detailing of the build, and it was a small enough project that I didn't get unmotivated or bored with the theme at all. So all in all, that little project had a positive effect, as I now found a scale that suited me best. But in a way, I already had a long time ago actually. Because when I first started my abandoned world project, I didn't know what to expect. I started building an abandoned street where the buildings would have a kind of cyberpunk theme to them. But very quickly I changed this to something that I was inspired by in a render I found online. And this was the main thing about my building process with the abandoned city. I had plenty of ideas of what I wanted to build, but I never planned particularly far ahead. I just went on with the flow of what I wanted to build that day, and I figured out this was my ideal way to work on a project. No matter how well I plan a project from the start, I will get way too focused on the plan and get lost in the massive scale of the project, because I want to build great buildings. But a great build isn't necessarily the individual building themselves. It's mostly about the overall character of a build. As demonstrated by my abandoned city, although the buildings looked good in my opinion, the main driving aspect of what made it good was its charm and character. I mentioned the windows, for example, before. I don't really like the windows of the buildings, in particular when they stand for themselves. But when they are put on these buildings, they give it a sort of charm and character to them, and that was what I really enjoyed about my abandoned city. So, now we come to today. I have now started another abandoned city project. I think this is my niche on YouTube by now. And I'm just building a few buildings at a time, according to what I feel like building in that specific building session. Now, there's only one issue I have right now with building. I feel motivated to build. I have ideas, but no specific plans. But I still have a direction I want to go. And that was the main problem with my first abandoned city. In my old abandoned city, I built buildings just as I went along, and I think this was a great way to build. But it still lacked a bit of direction. I still lacked a bit of scale to some of the structures, and especially the road network didn't make as much sense as I wanted. It was very all over the place, and that was the thing that I wanted to improve on in this next city. The scale of the builds would be the same, and the way I had plans and ideas for the builds would be the same as well. The things I would do differently is have a more clear direction of where I wanted to build with the different areas and such, and have the road network be more comprehensive. And then I would change the windows so they would be unique to every building. And for what I've built, I think this was a very good choice. Now there's only one issue I have right now with building and Minecraft in general. I feel motivated to build, I have ideas but no specific plans, but I still have a direction I want to go. And that was the main problem with my first abandoned city. I just don't really have a lot of time right now, as I just started university. I would rather go home and play a game of CS before reading up on the next object the next day, than to think about the color palette and build style of the next building in my city. Not to mention that a building session ideally should last a couple of hours at least to get good footage of the buildings for the time-lapse. So I only really have a few times a week where I can really delve into the building process and get something done in my world. When I get more into my new life as a student, I will probably have more opportunity to balance my time, but time will tell how that goes. All I know right now is that I want to continue making content. I don't think it would stop now, but I can't promise any uploads. I will continue to have the awful upload schedule that I have, and I don't think that will change no matter my motivation. I just think I need to work out my time schedule and see where I have room to do other stuff than university right now. If you didn't care about my motivational rant, I hope that you enjoyed the background time lapses of my lost projects, and see that I have been doing something while I was away this time. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed it, and I will hopefully see you soon in another video. Bye bye.